the internet. Okay. Ruth, are we all set to go with the recording and the mics and all that?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, we'll call this meeting to order. Ruth, if you would take roll, please.
Andy Hitchcock.
Here.
John Buda.
Here.
Lindsay South.
Here.
Cindy Matejka.
Here.
All right. So we'll start with the approval of the minutes from our meeting on June 21st. Has the board had a chance to review those? Any questions, comments, or alterations?
No.
No.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve.
A second.
Okay.
Andy Hitchcock.
Yes?
John Buda.
Yes.
Lindsay South.
Yes.
Cindy Matejka.
Yes.
All right. So we have 3 items on the agenda today. The first is a carryover from our previous meeting, and then 2 new applications today. A couple things, well, I guess really one thing before we have Bridie swear in any people planning to speak. We only have 4 members here today. Typically, we have 5. We do require 3 yay votes to carry a motion. So if you would like to come back, if any of the applicants in the room want to come back at a later date, you are certainly welcome to do so. When you would have 5 members here instead of just the 4, you are welcome to continue on the application today if you'd like. Just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. Otherwise, without further ado, Bridie, would you like to swear everybody in, please?
Sure. Does anyone here like to speak or testify during the hearing? You can please raise your right hand. Even if you don't think you're gonna, if you think you're gonna speak. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth and the whole truth?
All right, everybody's been duly sworn. So, agenda item number 1, it's a continuation of BZA case number 23-04 for offense at the property at 1560 Bell Road. And I believe we have the applicant and tenant, Jennifer Winter. Would you like to fill us in on what conversations you have had with the neighbors since our last meeting?
I have met with a few of the neighbors at a local get-together, and we had some great conversation, and I think we all want to have the same thing as far as keeping our properties beautiful and making sure everyone's happy. And it was very light, it was a social occasion, so, but I respect everyone's opinion, obviously, and hopefully I have a resolution that will serve that purpose.
Okay. And I see we have some new pictures. I'm not sure if everyone has had a chance to view those. In addition to the original submission, Ruth is now showing the proposal for the gate, and then I think the next picture shows sort of what that would look like. In my mind, fairly descriptive, just by looking at what you suggested.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to add? Or does the picture tell 1,000 words?
Well, for the most part, yes. There were examples that I found. As you know, the second photo that shows the side view of the, of that. As you know, I have what is an agricultural fence, which is what you can see behind those flat vertical boards, and the front facing board against the existing post. I would have to add 5 vertical posts in the front to be able to have the vertical boards installed and be properly supported, because some of the stances are a little bit further away. I would have to add 5 posts in the front, and they would be 6 by 1, because I believe that fence is appears to be a little bit shorter than the 4-foot fence that I have, and I want to make sure that it looks the proper way and doesn't look sparse by having the 1 by 4s. And then of course it would hide the wire behind that a little bit better as well.
Okay.
So it would be wrapped like that. It would have the vertical boards on posts and going across, and a vertical board hiding the round post.
Right.
And just to mention the gate. It's a similar example. I'm trying to have that sort of look. I thought I would do again, the 3 boards vertical, and then do a diagonal to make it just look a little bit nicer.
So the diagonal here is aesthetics as opposed to functional?
Correct.
Just for clarification, I think you meant 3 boards horizontal.
3 boards, I apologize.
No, you said 3 boards vertical.
Vertical,
Just want to.
yes.
Based on this, if the resident changed her fence to this, it would comply with zoning. We wouldn't need,
No, it doesn't. If you read page 31 of our bylaws, it does not say that. Read 4, Article 4 on page 31 about fences. Because I wrote a fence 12 years ago, and I put it on the side of my yard. The zoning inspector came and told me to go to the backyard, for which I did move it to the backyard.
And can you introduce yourself and let us know where you are?
I live at 101 Silver Springs Trail, and I have 2 golden retrievers that are oddly vicious, that's why I keep them in a fence.
so you're saying, what,
It says you cannot have a fence in the front yard unless it's a split rail.
correct.
So are we changing this?
So hold on, so what page, you're quoting to the code, but I don't see where you're quoting to the code. Can you tell me what page it is?
31, Article 4. And it's asking, are we changing it from split rail?
It's not.
We may have a different book. We've had a couple of revisions, so.
Yeah, so I
just
don't
give
see
us
it on
a
that
second.
page, so what I understand, and it just so it's in the minutes, so we allow fences as long as they're split rail, and split rail is defined in the code. A split rail fence is one in which fence rails split from logs, which I think is all pieces of wood.
Right.
Are arranged horizontally, spaced apart, and linked by stationary wooden posts,
So
right?
the version of the part of the fence that's going back
Sure, but if you go down to the next page.
would be representative of the split rail.
Yeah.
And Dave. can help us.
But I don't think defined in the code. I think there's room for interpretation on what's considered a split rail fence in the code.
Well, and it also says in here, it should go, fences may be permitted along the side or rear lot line set back at least 3 feet from the actual boundary line, provided at least 25% of the vertical surface is open to light and air, such fences, and it goes on. So it clearly says the rear or the side, not the front. And then it goes down to say split rail should go on the front.
So to be clear, the only issue at play here is the front fence. So Dave, if you could confirm the back and the side, we don't have any concerns as long as it meets the location standards.
That's correct.
So the aesthetics, the material does not matter.
Right.
So really we're only considering the front lot line relative to the type of fence that's been proposed. Ms. Winter, did you have anything else to say that you, just to share with the board? Just want to make sure you have a chance to finish your thoughts, that's all.
I appreciate that. I believe this is a split rail fence when I'm proposing. There are many versions of a split rail. I've done a ton of research, obviously, to make sure that what I'm proposing complies. And that is, I think this is a very good resolution. I'm hoping.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Ms. Swansek?
Yeah, Patty Valensik, 1567 Bell Road. To me, that's a slip board fence, that's not split rail. That's flat board. Split rail is one that was in the other picture. And that's more in compliance with what zoning has written down. That's split rail, what you see there on the right. The gate itself is sort of a flat split board. I think we have to be real careful that we don't set a precedent, because flat boards in front yards aren't what zoning has dictated in the past. And that's why I'm here to make sure zoning is upheld.
Kathy Epcart, 51 Bell Road. I guess I'm not clear what it says in the bylaws about
it being in the front yard like that. I don't have any problem with things in the backyard, but what if everybody down Bell or in other neighborhoods start putting it in the front yard like that? I mean, I don't think that's a good look, although I think this looks much better than the original gate. I think we have to follow verbatim what the law really says and be consistent, because it seems like in the past, some people were told one thing and other people were told another. So before anything is accepted or passed, I think we should be real consistent about that.
So for the board's reference, at least in my book, I'm on page 38. That references fences. So that's section 4.01 B4. It gets a lot of letters and numbers in front of it. But this reads that as long as, so it's a front yard issue with the aesthetics. So as long as it meets the location on the backyard and the side yard, it can be whatever it wants. And that's not a concern here. So really we're concerned with what the fence looks like when you drive past it on the road. And for front yard fences, you can have split rail fences. Lindsay, you referenced split rail as defined in the code, but.
So based on the reading of the code, so 4.10B4B, no fences are permitted along front lot lines with the exception of split rail fences, which shall not exceed 4 feet in height. Then if you go to the definition section of the code, under fences, this is definition number 45. It specifically defines a split rail fence as one in which fence rails split from logs are arranged horizontally, spaced apart, and linked by stationary wooden posts. You know, I don't know what zoning has done before and what's being referenced necessarily, but when this was written, it was written in this particular way. It didn't specifically talk about fences having to be linked in a particular way. When we look at how to read the code, we can assume that words were put here for a purpose and that words were left out for a purpose. Based on that, based on the definition that's here, I think that what's being proposed meets that definition. And I think that if that's not what we want the code to be, then there are avenues to try and get us to change the code, right? And that's not something that we do here. That's how I read the code. It's very clearly defined.
I don't agree with your reading, because if you Google split rail fence, it's not that. It's going with the logs on the side.
Sure, but when you look at it, go ahead.
You go around South Russell, which I did because I watched Granby won't take a nap, and I went on every street around here. There are very few fences. The Cruises have a split rail in front of their house. You see very few fences in the front yard, and if you do, it's the log split structure. That's what South Russell must have defined it as, because that's what we have. This is the first fence I'm seeing anywhere in this village that's like this.
Sure. And I hear you. I don't know why people pick their particular fences. I'm interpreting it this way because that's how you interpret that's how you read a legal writing, right? So I'm reading, we can assume that the reason why these words were used in the definition was purposeful. And so if other people chose other types of split rail fences, then that's the kind of fence that they chose. Whether that's the kind of fence I would choose, whether that's the kind of fence, if you Google it, that's what pops up. I don't think, from my perspective, that's not how it's defined in here.
I don't agree. I don't think you're interpreting it right, my point of view, but teach their own.
Ms. Wansick?
And if you Google split rail fence, you will get pictures only of that log split, not flat rail fences.
Ms. Winter?
I did actually Google split rail fences, and there are various versions of those types of fences, and the second photo was definitely one of them. And there is a home on Snyder, it's the first driveway after Champion Lane, and I don't recall the exact address, but I have photos. There's a fence, it's on the side, but it's very, very close to the front. And you can see it from the road, and it is exactly, except it doesn't have a round post behind it. The second photo that I submitted, I have pictures I can pass on.
Okay. That'd be great if you would, please.
That is the,
But it's not across the front,
no, it's very close to the front,
but it's not across the front.
Andy, can I
it's
approach?
just right next to the road. I'm just commenting that there are fences of this type,
Bridie, can I ask you a question?
Thank you.
of this type all over,
Whether or not, our role today is not to define a split rail fence, correct? So if Ms. Winters wants to put up this fence, the next step is for her to get a permit to do that? Like, what would be her next? Today, we can't vote on whether or not this is a split rail fence or not. Today, we vote on whether or not we're going to allow for her current fence to stay there, right? I think that's what we're voting on today.
So it's really a request for a variance, right? It's
Correct.
under current fence.
Correct.
Okay, so correct, you are not at all defining split rail fence, that's not what's being asked of you. She would still have to get a fence permit for the front. It's like any fence, right?
Sure. Who then would approve or not approve whether or not that's a split rail fence?
That would be the zoning inspector and the building inspector.
Well, I have to agree with you, when I see the definitions of split rail fence, which is compliant, maybe, I know what you're talking about, the log type fences, but I've seen these fences before too.
How is that gate, is that compliant with code also? I mean, are we still saying we're going ahead with a gate if we say okay on the fence? And I don't know of anyone else that has a gate in the front that I'm aware of in the community.
stockade.
Yes, I'm curious about that. Yes.
I just wanted to mention, if it was unclear, I apologize, I will be modifying the gate as well and adding the 3 horizontal boards to the front and making it look the same as the front fence. So it will have the same boards, and again, it probably will have, I'm just trying to figure out, but it'll have a vertical board or 2 and the diagonal to dress it up a little bit. That's in that photo. So it'll be split rail gate.
I guess my question is, I don't really oppose the look of it too much, and it's only one house on Bell. But what I'm getting at is this something you want to allow? Okay, I'm on Bell Road. How about if we live in Kensington Green and every house down the way, 6, 8, 10 of them, want to put these up and put gates across like that? Once you start it and once you allow it, you can't say, well, it's only allowed on Bell, but not down Silver Springs or not down Maple Hill.
Right.
Every application we receive is judged on its own merits. So there are any number of different considerations for properties in subdivisions or different parts of the village. So it's not a precedent-setting thing. That's not to say that someone wouldn't come in and say, well, you allowed it for my neighbor. And absolutely, we might consider that. But there's no rubber stamp to say, well, now we're going to allow this. So it's carte blanche for everyone in
So
the
you're
village.
saying you would allow it for one person, but maybe if someone came in a year from now and wanted to do the same thing Kensington Green, you could say no.
Absolutely.
Really?
Every application is judged on its own merits. Yeah, there is no precedent that we follow to say, well, because we did it here, we have to do it there.
What about the guidelines in the book? You've got the guidelines, why, it says nothing in the front yard, this what level,
So again, we review every application because, the village code says X, and sometimes people want to do something different. Whether that's placing a building in a different spot in their yard, or putting a fence, or having something that's a little higher than our code allows. That's why this board exists, to make a rational decision to say, yeah, that this makes sense based on the criteria provided, and the harm, or the benefit outweighs the harm.
And I think we should clarify, we don't have the power to approve the particular fence that she is presenting, right? we have to decide whether or not she would be granted a variance. The original request was a variance to allow the fence that is currently at that property. That's what we have to vote yes or no on today. If we vote yes, we're saying that her fence could stay exactly how it is. If we vote no, we say that we're not approving the variance for the fence to stay as is. And that's all that we are allowed to do. So I think, in the last meeting when this discussion first started, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth, and understanding that there is already a fence there, and trying to find a way where everyone who's residing in South Russell, those that are driving past the fence, those that are living in the home with the fence, that everyone can find a resolution, right? And so I think that's part of why Ms. Winters brought this here today, to show that she is doing a good faith effort in trying to find a resolution. But at the end of the day, if she came and showed us any kind of fence, we can't make a decision on that, right? So, and that was my question for Bridie. It doesn't matter ultimately what I defined as a split rail fence, because that's going to be decided by somebody else when she submits a new permit, right? And so I think that's what I just want to make sure that it's clear. We don't set a precedent on specifically what fence everyone can have. At the end of the day, we need to read the code, interpret the code to the best of our ability, and then vote based on that interpretation. If somebody interpreted the code and allowed or disallowed a fence 10 years ago, I can't speak to that. And if the fences that are being allowed as residents who feel are not acceptable, I can't change the code, but there's certainly avenues you can take to talk to people who can change this, right?
My question is, how did it get built without a permit? And if there was a permit, how did anyone come and see what was getting done with it?
People go up and down Bell a million times a day. I was stopped for not having a building permit for a backyard shed. I don't know why it was allowed to go that far without someone saying, hey.
John, you have
I need some clarification
sure.
on what it is we are here to do
Yeah.
in this case today, because my understanding is we postponed this discussion from the last meeting, or 2 meetings, 2 months ago. So my thought was that the parties were to hopefully come to some amicable solution. So the applicant has presented us with what she is willing to do versus what was originally put up. Presumably, to see if that would receive approval on appeal. I've heard that another permit would have to be applied for the new style of fence. So I would like confirmation if that is correct. First, is there a permit for the fence that has been installed?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we don't have a permit.
All right.
That's helpful to know. But maybe Amy, you can help me.
Can I say for future, I like our neighbors, and I don't want to have problems with our neighbors. It's your job to enforce the laws. It's not to say to us, work it out with your neighbors. Don't put us in that position to pit each other. The house is much, 100% better than it was, and I like my neighbors. I don't want to be put in that position. That's your job to enforce those laws.
To be clear, the response from our previous meeting was, as John said, it was a good faith effort to identify a workable solution. And that is, the hope was that there would be a resolution that, everyone could agree with. And clearly that hasn't happened. I think the parties spoke, but I'm hearing some disagreement. That's okay. Reasonable people can disagree. And ultimately it is our job to then say, yes, we think this makes sense, or no, we don't think this makes sense. And yeah, the buck stops with us, but that's the first attempt was, let's see if we can work it out. More often than not, I would say, just based on my experience, when neighbors sit down and say, really, what is your opposition to this plan? How can I make it better? Everyone wins. And so that's why we went to it with that approach. May not have worked out in this case.
Allison Dean, I'm at 920 Bell. You can probably see me walking my dog everywhere. So I have been around the neighborhoods and I have seen all these split rail fences and I quite honestly wondered why we had so many split rail fences. I fully support this. This is a very nice modernization of a split rail fence. All of the fences I have seen have broken. They're all broken, they're rotting, they look bad. This is an upgrade, and that's all of the purpose of the law for a split rail fence. You have the 4 foot, the view in, it looks great, and it will last a lot longer than the other way of doing a split rail fence. And there's just multiple ways of doing it. So I fully appreciate the modernization of that split rail fence and fully support that because the ones that are out there now look terrible.
Ms. Bunsick?
I have to disagree. I think that what you're looking at and you're calling a split rail is a ranch fence, a ranch rail fence. And the argument that we're allowing it on Bell because, hey, it's not a subdivision, doesn't fly. Because the next person who comes in and wants to fence in their dogs in Kensington Green in their front yard, they're gonna say, well, it says split rail fence, and you're defining split rail fence as a flat ranch board fence, so let's go. That will be their argument, and I don't know how you can turn them down.
So I just want to make sure that my statements, I just want to clarify. I don't have the authority to say whether or not the fence she has proposed is acceptable. I have given my opinion on that because we've now talked about this fence for what feels like hours, right? And so I think that there's been a lot of discussion and we have shared our opinion. At the end of the day, it does not matter how I define a split rail fence. It matters how the person who's going to approve or not approve her permit defines her split rail fence. And I think that based on the amount of time she spent here, it was important for her to hear whether or not she is going to just be denied moving forward. When it comes to neighborhoods, I don't think anyone here is saying that if you live in a neighborhood, we're going to deny a variance for you, which again, we're not giving a variance for a particular type of fence. We're either going to approve or deny a variance for the type of fence she has up right now. So we're going to either vote yes, she can keep that fence and do nothing else, or no, she has to do something different. In these neighborhoods, whether or not there's fences in the front yard, that's up to the HOA, because based on the code, there's nothing in South Russell saying that they can't have that particular fence based on this reading. So I just want to make sure it's clear. We're not saying that we're just going to just approve or deny at whim. Again, we're going to approve or deny the fence she currently has up, which was what the variance was for, right? Originally, Ms. Winters came in and said, I just want to leave my fence up as is, and that's what we're going to vote on here today. And so, you know, I think since the last meeting, she's heard what everyone's saying and has tried to find a solution, but ultimately we're not the ones that make that decision.
And to be clear, I really hate to get us off topic here, but there seems to be some question about, you know, what can neighborhoods do? Split rail fences are allowed in front yards. So there is nothing in this, I mean, if you put it in the right spot and it is at the right height, build away. We can't stop you. We don't want to stop you. The HOA might have a problem with it, but that's, our code allows it. So the request here is a variance to our code. That request originally was met with some interesting discussion a couple months ago. Hope for a resolution, which we don't have, which is fine. You know, ultimately we'll vote. But I think one thing I really like to be clear on, I would agree with Lindsay's interpretation of split rail. It's not how some people in the crowd define it. It's certainly how I do. I think by the letter of our code, it seems to be that would be a split rail. The proposal on the other picture, I would interpret as a split rail. I think Dave has said the same thing. So I guess to the question of whether we approve or disapprove the existing fence, my gut tells me that if Ms. Winter were to put this up, it would be approved pending a permit and paying the permit fee and the building fee or whatever. So to the point where we are now, I'm not really sure that there's much more to discuss. I'm certainly open to more conversation.
Well, I'm gonna go back to what Cindy said. Split rail, not split rail, everyone has a different opinion, but what does it say in there about the gates? We
Yeah.
talked about the split rail, but no one's talked about gates in the front yard.
Dave, I'm going to ask you for your opinion on that, and then I'll chime in with my perspective.
There's nothing in our code that actually talks about the gate in the front. If they went across the whole front yard with a split rail fence, it'd be the same thing. A
Okay.
gate or a split rail fence.
Okay.
So we have nothing in the code that actually dictates whether allow a gate or not a gate. It's just a split rail fence across the front property.
So
Okay.
from a functional standpoint, we interpret the gate as part of the fence.
Yes,
And as long as the gate itself is split rail or the same design as the remainder of the fence, we would look at it as such, as a split rail.
yes.
Okay. Are there, so let me ask this, and maybe Bridie, you're the appropriate authority on this. We vote on the application in front of us, which is a variance from a split rail. If that is denied and the next application that crosses Dave's desk is that, she doesn't need a variance. So the conversation is moot. I mean, the past couple months have been for naught to a certain extent, other than to get her in the right spot.
Correct.
Okay.
And I can't advise most winters, but you should know that you also could withdraw your application for a variance when there is no vote to make. If you wanted to do that, if you did not want it to go to a vote, and you could just submit the new fence permit to the building department. But if there is a denial, you should appeal that. And if they approve your variance, then you can also obviously see them up. And there's also a chance for you to put conditions on it.
Right. Right. Are there other comments? Let me ask this. Are there other comments from the audience? Other questions, things that anyone would like to add?
I guess I have one that I know was.
If you could introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, Doug, Richard, Doug, and I like to speak for myself, but I'm just kind of taken back a little bit. We're out on Maple Hill Drive, and it's split rail fences along there. And I'm kind of taken back that was all that was there. Because to be honest with you, it really doesn't go with our house. I'm surprised, like, like white picket fence or white 3 horizontal board fence or something would probably go more with the style of our home. And I'm not gonna change it, but I just was kind of wondering why they're all the same. Sometimes having a little bit of variety is the spice of life, and to make it nice and appealing to the eye, rather than see cookie cutter, the same thing after the same thing after the same thing. Just my own thought about that. It really did strike me when I first moved here.
We also noticed that there are really a lot of, and ours included, are quite run down. The split rail fences are looking really quite shabby. And we're right now investing a lot of money to improve our home, and it doesn't quite fit our style of the home. I guess we could always remove it, and just go with nothing in the
We're
front.
not gonna do that. We're
But
probably
we're
gonna
we're gonna have to replace some, which to me is gonna look awkward because some are gonna be new and some are gonna be weathered, but historic, just kind of looks very dated. It goes with the 1964 year of our house. So, just a thought.
Bridie, is that council? If somebody had an issue with something in the code, they wanted the code to be changed, that's council.
Well, technically, it first goes to planning commission. So
Got
it can be initiated by planning commission, council, or property owner. Any kind of zoning amendment. Planning commission then would make a recommendation to council. Council would vote on the zoning change.
John?
So it would be possible, I'm saying, not proposing it, but it would be possible to put forward a motion that if the present fence was to be modified in accordance with the photographs the design that we've been shown, we could possibly approve that. Could
Yes.
we possibly approve that?
Well, you wouldn't be approved.
Subject to a
Yeah.
permit.
So,
Because
It wouldn't be conditions.
okay, that's great, that's a
She
good
has to
point.
get a
For a
variance.
variance then, am I right? Because am I assuming if you were to approve, if you're talking about this kind of fence, you're calling it a split rail fence and therefore approved. That I don't think is your.
No.
Yeah,
Variance.
I'm not trying to define the fence. If it was corrugated steel that was on that picture, I'm only saying, could we make a motion and have a proposal to accept the appeal if it was modified with XYZ fencing? I'm not trying to define split rail fencing. We were presented with a style that is obviously receiving multiple opinions as far as what it is. So I'm just looking at what was presented and asking if we could approve.
A variance with the condition that.
Yes, thank you.
You can do that, yes.
Yeah, we've done that plenty of times in the past, so that's not a concern. I think the question or the point that Bridie raises is that if it's modified to appear like that, it meets our code. Ergo, we don't need a variance. So as long as she were to erect a fence such as that and get the appropriate permit, then again, the conversations here are moot. Good conversations nonetheless, but
Thank you for the clarification.
But out of curiosity, she didn't get a permit for that, and was able to build the fence. So anybody can build anything in our village without a permit. And then if we want to, we come here for a variance or not. If you don't come for a variance, it just stays there forever. And what if someone wants to build a giant shed in the front yard on Silver Springs and the neighbors like, what happens? They just build it? We have no,
so
zoning's nothing?
we have had a handful of issues over the years that have come to us for, I'll say, after the fact approval. Certainly not an enjoyable part of this role to have to adjudicate something after it's already up, whether it's a fence that someone spent thousands of dollars to install or a children's playground that now your kids are crying their eyes out because we said tear it down. It's not ideal. And at the end of the day, Dave is one person to manage the building. If you're going to do something in your backyard, we can't really stop you. What this board can do is say that doesn't comply with our zoning. And if we give a variance for it, then sadly, I mean, it's blessed. It's not the right approach, but it's blessed. If we deny a variance, then one of the possibilities is that it gets torn down. And someone spent a lot of money to do something that ultimately gets demolished, and that's just how it goes.
There's additional fees too, right? Isn't there a fee?
Mhm.
Yes.
An additional fee if you put something up and then have to get a permit later, a late fee of sort.
You can have it for double.
You can have your fee doubled.
That makes me feel better.
So I guess let me ask the applicant, based on what you've heard, would you like to continue with your application tonight? I think the board here is of the opinion that that picture complies with zoning as is.
I think I understand what you're asking. I can either have the board make a decision or withdraw the application and re-permit. To me, it's almost like it's the same thing, and I would rather maybe the board should decide which way to go.
Go for a vote.
So, okay. So we would then be making a condition subject to the appearance.
I think.
Or would someone like to make a motion that we can vote on? Because I guess I'm thinking regardless of our motion, if the applicant walks away tonight and builds that tomorrow, the outcome of our motion is irrelevant because she would comply with zoning and we wouldn't.
Except if we were to vote yes on her variance conditioned on this, I think as a board then we are defining a split rail fence, and I don't think that's our authority. So if we were to say yes, we approve her variance as long as it looks like this, now we are setting a precedent that this is a variance we'll allow. I also just have to say, I don't necessarily think approving a variance with these conditions, in part because she built the fence before she got a permit, I think it makes it a little muddy. I think what we could do is just vote on the application that's in front of us, yes or no as to the fence that's currently there, and then she can take next steps to get another permit if we were to vote no. But that's just my opinion.
And if we have a motion and vote, well, we don't need, if we vote on the appeal of the existing fence, and if it does not pass, and if the applicant then submits a permit for the fence as it appears, and hypothetically, if that permit was denied for some reason that it does not meet a certain definition, she could appeal
Again.
and would come to us with this.
Sorry, say that again. So she goes to get the permit for what currently exists or for this?
For this.
Okay, because again, you cannot resubmit. Once it's denied, it's what you have. You cannot bring the same.
If we deny, if the existing appeal fails and the applicant submits a permit for the fence as it is currently
Being shown.
exemplified, and if that permit is denied, she can appeal,
Correct.
and we will then be looking at a waiver for this style.
Dave's
Just
not
wanna-
gonna do that to us.
No.
I'm kidding, I don't know. Dave, I don't know.
I can't guarantee anything, I just wanted to be clear on what possibly could happen.
You're right.
So what I'm hearing are two options, and Ms. Winter, just so we're clear, can withdraw your application. We can vote on the, I'll call it the agricultural fence, we'll just say the existing fence, as it stands today, which I think will probably not be well received. And then you'll need to apply for a permit, do that, and see what happens. Those are your two options. I'll take it from you which you would prefer, and we will certainly proceed accordingly.
Thank you all for your clarification, that really helped. So I will withdraw my variance request and move forward and submit for a new permit.
Knowing that this has been up, do we have a time frame by which the applicant should apply for that permit, Dave?
I think we could set one 30 days,
Yes.
reasonable.
So since we're really not voting on anything at this point, 30 days is not really a formal thing, but sooner rather than later. Thank you. Okay. So we will mark this as withdrawn and move to agenda item number 2. So this is BZA case number 23-05 for an exterior structure requiring an area and a height variance at 76 Maple Hill Drive. Mr. Richard, would you like to share a little bit about your plan and your request, please?
Yes, so I'm Doug Richard, my wife Molly, and we're new here to the area. We are combining two families, my daughter and her two children that go to Schwinn schools, and my wife and I, so we have a lot of stuff. And so we are looking for extra space to put all this stuff, because kind of like keep everything neat and orderly out in the yard or whatever. And first I put the garage up, and I don't want to get the weeds too much, but that was kind of cost prohibitive, and other variances involved, that would be like within 3 feet of the property line. The next choice was maybe put behind the house and tear out our deck, and that was really cost prohibitive. So we were looking at the third option of putting up a structure like this. It is 20 by 24. It is 20 by 24 inside. The building itself would be like 480 square feet inside, and then additional square footage coming to the porch. We're over the square footage, that's one of the variances, we're over by 72 square feet. And then the height, we're over the height by 4 feet, I believe, we're at 19 feet, equal to 4. And if you look at the design of that garage shed, we're gonna do something a little different, put on a nice garage door rather than these type of doors. And I think, we mentioned that in our paperwork. We're also gonna put in an actual, like a door with, that you have on your home, which would be a little bit more secure. It's gonna go with the design of that. But what brought us here was we picked that up because of the aesthetics of it and the look. I didn't know I was gonna get into the variance thing, but that's what took us into variance, because this is engineered. We asked the builders, Pine Craft Builders, if they could lower that roof line down to keep the same look. It can't be done because of the engineering, the weights of, snow or whatever might be on that. It kind of pushes on the walls and differently than what they call that an A-frame cottage design. So the A-frame is at peak there, it's that height for you, gets the snow off and everything else. But so anyway, the two variances we're looking at are the height and the sides.
Okay.
And the reason for that, like I said, is we got a lot of things to store inside the building. We wouldn't be able to see is a little loft where it gives us extra storage for decorations.
He has a lot of tools.
I have a lot of tools.
And a writing.
I am a tool guy, I lawnmower, and I do like to keep everything tucked away, put away nice and neat, so that's what allows us to do that.
Well, when we were looking for a house too, it was really hard to find one in our price range, with everything it needed. And this house fit everything, but it doesn't have a full basement. It only has like a basement room with a laundry room. So we're just missing some square footage that we need for having this merge between the daughter and grandkids and us. So,
Can we pull up where it shows where it's gonna be on the property?
it's a long, it's a long side.
When I glanced at it, when I was driving by, it's pretty much straight back from your driveway, is it not? That's what I.
Yes, Cindy, it's straight back, it's tucked mostly behind the house. If you look at that, that's a pretty good representation. We'll be 30 foot off the property line. There's a lot of trees, if you will, and things that really, it's kind of gonna be hard to really see. John came out to our house, and I think a few other people, and thank you for doing that, but he mentioned that one neighbor won't even really be able to see it with all his stuff from one side. The other guy on the other side, I don't think, you're gonna see it, but it's not like stark right out there in the field,
The shed itself is on the right side of your property, and that's where there's all those trees right there to block so the neighbor that's closest to the shed, there's woods right
And
there.
we have about 100 feet of trees behind us too, it's just all woods. And then it's just acres of woods after that, so it's, nobody's gonna do anything.
Is anyone here today, a neighbor, is anyone here to talk about this? Other than you?
I do want to say, because Andy, you mentioned it, is, I can talk to the neighbors or whatever, and Brian, my neighbor, I don't know his last name. He came out yesterday because we're getting a new roof on the house, and I do want to mention, that the roof shingle is going to match the new shingle we're getting on the house. So I've asked him to match that, but he mentioned to me that we're going to up their property values by doing the new roof and shed. He liked it. He seemed pretty enthused.
Should ask him to chip in.
But we haven't gotten the neighbors on the other side. We have talked to them a little bit, but nothing about that. They haven't said anything to us, and they seem pretty quiet.
And there's no one backing up, you're on the side of, there's no one behind
There's
you.
probably, I don't know
Lots and lots and lots of
Feet
acres.
of woods
Yeah.
all along there. It's-
Okay.
So the neighbor that is in that house right there, the one that would be
Yep.
closest,
Yeah,
have they given any comment one way or the other?
no, he hasn't, the one on the other side has, the other two, we don't really see them a whole lot.
Yeah, they're never out, just.
And do they receive a letter?
No, I have
No,
not
it's the other
received any.
No, but do they receive notice? that-
Oh, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
And they have not responded, to our knowledge. Okay, thank you.
So a couple questions for you. First, is there a homeowners association with Maple Hill? Okay, so we don't need to worry about an approval there. The second question, and maybe this is for you, Dave, would something like that require any sort of architectural review board
This one would.
because of
Just the size,
the size?
yes.
Okay. So to be fair, there's a chance we may approve the variance for the location and height, but the architectural review board would say no.
I understand.
Okay. How will this be affixed to the ground?
Posts and beam, so it'd be, I believe, 4x6 posts in the ground with, I believe, 2x8s, all heavily bolted. And then the flooring in it is quite impressive, it's 1.5 inch yellow pine, so it's pretty sturdy build.
Okay.
But it's gonna be post and beam.
That next one roof is the.
Yeah, I should download it.
Yeah, there we go, right there. So, you can see there's gonna be, looks like, 4 posts, across, and then the, I believe they're 2x8s, and that is part of the, brings us up an extra foot, is it being up on posts and beams, so.
And is this stick built or is this prefab?
This, they tell me it's gonna be a day to put it up, so I think what they do is they, bring in semi-prefab. Pinecraft makes everything on site. I believe a lot of stuff right there, and then they bring in,
Okay.
you know, one day to put it up is what they said, so.
And this will, so just to clarify, it'll be on a bed of limestone, gravel, as opposed to a concrete slab?
It was originally just gonna be on the grass there and, you know, right up, just right at the grass level. But I have talked to them about putting stone or something underneath it because I really didn't want pests making a hole under there, so. That is something, actually, I was talking to Mike, I don't know his last name, apologize for Pinecraft. But, we talked about filling that in with stone once they get the bottom of the post and beam up, because it was stone, structure on top, 'cause I don't want farms under there.
Okay.
Can I mention one other thing?
Please?
So this is gonna be, out there in the backyard, there's not gonna be a driveway run to it. I think, John, maybe you asked me that, and, so that would be a concern on something, you're gonna put a drive up to it, that, you know, no, I have no intention.
My only concern, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My only concern is the height, but I know that's the architectural, because of the other buildings, all the sheds in the neighborhood, when I looked around at them, most of them, well, all of them were level, either level with the roofs, the garage roof, or they were shorter. So yours would be a lot higher, so I'm just wondering how far you could see, I mean, I know it's in the trees, but is it visual? Do you think it'll be?
I don't think you're hardly, excuse me, I don't think you're gonna see the roof.
Okay.
At all. It is pretty well hidden. John, maybe.
Our
you
house
can
is
just-
pretty high,
Our house
so,
is-
it's a ranch.
If we could pull up that drawing again too, maybe we can another look. Cindy, was that you out there today?
Yes, when when you were working out there, I drove past your wife, but I got your grandson, yeah. I didn't want to stop because you were putting your roof
I was
up.
hoping you would, because I was gonna introduce myself, but we got the. So the picture with the, where we have the house and where it's gonna sit on that lot.
Oh, with your grandkids in it?
No, it's just a drawing.
Drawing.
Oh, I see, it's like that.
Yeah.
I just want to look at that again, because that's a
Sure.
great question. There we go. So if you can scroll down to the bottom of the house, then it's pretty good, like I said, pretty good representation of that's gonna sit mostly behind the house with all the trees and everything. I don't think it's gonna be real noticeable sitting in the backyard. It's 100 foot beyond our end of our driveway back there too. So it's hardly that.
So is your position that a smaller shed wouldn't meet your needs?
Well, on this particular shed, because I did talk to them, they do everything cookie cutter. Like if I did try to shorten it or something, that's gonna cost me a little extra, and quite frankly, I do need the room. Embarrassingly enough, I do have a lot of tools and stuff. I do a lot of woodworking, and mostly for myself. You know, everything I do in this house is gonna be a lot different.
Okay. Do you know, I mean, do they have, so it looks like what's allowed under the code is square feet of 405 square feet. Yeah, so, oh, I'm sorry, 504.
Right.
And then, I mean, do they have a shed available that's around that square footage?
Also, that front porch is being counted as square footage, even though it's outside. You don't have to, so that's where our problem is on the square footage, is because that porch, and without the porch, you don't have that look, and so that's.
Yeah, I was really envisioning myself sitting on that back porch while I was reading, maybe Kool-Aid or something.
I am from the kids.
But it's actually 480 square feet inside the building. Like I said, we are 72 square feet over. And you know, I think
That 4 feet is just that little.
John?
I have two questions.
just,
Did you look at designs that meet village code?
the reason for this one is, as I mentioned, it's a loft inside. Other designs that are lower don't allow for that loft. You can walk under that and walk up on top too. And so this allows for a little more room to maneuver up above in that loft. And yes, we did, answer your question, yes, we did look at others and wasn't, didn't seem to serve our needs as much as this one would. I like this one, not just because of storage, but I love it. So I'm hoping the other board can get approval if they would too.
I just noticed, I'm sorry, I just noticed one of these exact shed, I'm pretty sure was on, was it, Fernwood?
Yeah.
Behind the house, and it looks
That's
awesome.
Yeah.
It looks really nice. I
And
don't
I-
know if it was the same size, but
No, it's
it's,
not.
if you're looking for that height, it was.
Go ahead, John.
How many designs did you look at? How many
Oh,
manufacturers?
Probably,
Everyone I had.
well, we did look at them all, but there was probably at least,
We did,
you say 4 maybe?
yeah, some look more like just that one car garage. We really didn't want just a one car garage sitting back there, but we did look at a lot of different design. Every one that they had, we walked through every single one of them. But we wanted, you know, this is gonna be a lot, so.
And I think where John and Lindsay are going is one of the considerations we have is, can this problem be solved through an obvious solution, which in this case is a smaller shed lower to the ground. So I'm just trying to understand the thought process. There are any number of other considerations we have to consider, but that's certainly probably one of the most relevant here. Ms. Winter?
Just gonna make a comment, I've been to Pinecraft before, and I've looked at a lot of their sheds, and they're really high quality made, and they have a lot of different types of sheds. And I agree with you, this is aesthetically by far one of the nicest ones that they have. All the other ones, and most of the other ones are very utilitarian. And yes, it would solve the storage problem, and I have seen the loss in there, and actually that the lower height, there are the I'm trying to think of the name of it, but the way the roof is supported, there really is no loft space because of the way the structure holds up the, I forgot what it's called.
The trusses.
The trusses.
Yes, so the way the trusses are in those shorter ones, it takes up all the loft space, and you literally have, like on the edges, the corners, and you really just have so very limited space, because I've seen those, and I've been inside back one, and it does have one.
I imagine you're gonna run electricity back here.
Yes, definitely. need
Will you run
lights.
water?
You know, I was thinking of putting in a hydrant back there, because I'm gonna have a lot of gardens. I'm gonna have a garden back there next to Brian and get a little competition with them, I'm sure, but, I'll probably have a little hydrant back there, not in the building,
Sure.
just a little outdoor frost free type possible.
And there's no concerns on running that back with all the woods and all, there's no concerns about running all that back there?
The garden is pretty clear,
It is,
right behind our house to it.
yeah, it's just,
Thank you.
Cindy, do you have other questions, comments?
No, my only thing is I agree with them to see if there was something smaller that could be utilized in that area.
John, do you have anything
No other
else?
questions.
Lindsay,
No, thank you.
anything else from the audience on this? Okay. So we have two requests here. And just to be clear, I think I'm good with the information provided. We'll vote on them separately, just so they can be heard separately. What I will do is make a motion to approve an area variance of 72 square feet to allow a 576 square foot barn at the property located at 76 Maple Hill Drive. Are there questions?
Do you want to move it as a shed instead of a barn?
Tomato, tomato?
Maybe. I just argued about a split rail fence for an hour.
Perhaps I will call it an accessory structure.
Thank you.
All right.
There is a,
I was gonna say outbuilding.
yeah, I'd say
All right.
building too.
So let's start over.
Thank you.
So for the property located at 76 Maple Hill Drive, I would make a motion to approve an area variance of 72 square feet to allow a 576 square foot accessory structure.
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? No?
No.
Ruth?
Andy Hitchcock,
Yes?
John Buda,
Yes.
Lindsay Sell,
Yes.
Cindy Mateicha.
Yes,
Okay. So the second request is for the height. So for the property located at 76 Maple Hill Drive, I make a motion to approve a height variance of 4 feet to allow a maximum accessory structure height of 19 feet. Did I nail it?
Thank you.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion?
No.
Okay. Ruth?
Andy Hitchcock,
Yes?
John Buda,
Yes.
Lindsay Sell,
Yes.
Cindy Mateicha.
yes.
Subject to the Architectural Review Board, you're all set.
Thank you,
Yep.
everybody for your time. I appreciate both that came out. And Rose, yes, and Dave,
All right. So that brings us to our third and final agenda item on today's docket. This is BZA case number 23-06 for an area variance at 920 Bell Road. Applicants Brad Davis and Allison Dean. Would you like to provide a little bit of background on what you're proposing and give us a bit of a story?
Yes, Brad Davis, Allison Dean. Currently, we have a small shed on our property, and with all the lawn maintenance I do and the home improvements I like to do, it's a little small. Yeah, as you can see, it's a small little 8x8. It doesn't even fit my commercial lawnmower. So a lot of the yard equipment, a lot of my accessory tools are all filling up in the garage, which takes away from car space. So we have the opportunity to acquire a larger shed, a 10x20 shed, and we are looking for a variance that mirrors exactly the variance that we have for the current shed from a previous owner. The new shed will be along the same exact plane as the current one.
So what that's.
The outside wall will go no further than the current outside wall of our current shed. It's just going to be shifted a little bit to the south so that we can accommodate using the existing concrete pads that are on our property, use those as the exit for the shed, and then also walk around for the.
Also can't go the other way because of the well pump.
Yeah, so we also have a wellhead right there with the extra distance of the shed, with the 2 foot extra on the square footage. It encroaches too far on the wellhead, which.
Could you point out where the wellhead is, or just tell us?
It's actually right behind, in between the house and the shed currently.
Okay,
So it's kind of split right in the middle.
on that concrete
On that
walkway.
concrete pad, correct.
Okay.
And if we were to take this shed, put it where the existing is, it again would encroach too close to the wellhead based on guidelines. So we had to go with the normal and push it off a little bit. Not to mention, as we all saw with that massive rain, that is the only dry spot within our property when we get these large rains. The culvert underneath the Daisy Lane side cannot accommodate, and that was our backyard with the last rain. So, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
garage
our garage flooded, everything flooded.
Yeah.
So our plan here is just simply get a larger accessory building. The plan is to put it on top of limestone with a either 6x6 or 8x8 perimeter. The perimeter will be 1 to maybe 2 foot outside of the barn, but within our requested variance.
And it fits all the permit requirements, the size.
Yes, we're only about 200 square foot for the accessory building. What will happen is the new one will come out. The company that is transporting the new one will take the old one off the property the same day. So we will not have multiple buildings, and we will be well within building code.
So there's an existing variance, or there's a variance for the existing shed.
Correct.
Do we know what that variance is for? Distance from the side lot line?
Yes, the variance is for exactly what they're asking for.
Okay.
Yeah, we just have to reapply it because we're literally changing the positions.
Okay.
But again, that outside wall of the new building will be in the exact same point.
If they already have an approved variance,
Yeah, normally it would run with the land, and it does, but I would assume that it's a variance, that was, whatever site plan was submitted, it was for that site plan. So if they are moving it, yeah, they might have to appreciate it.
If they tore that down and put the exact same thing in its place, they would be fine.
got it.
Pursuant to whatever, yeah.
Yeah.
Site plan they have variance for.
Well,
Right.
all right.
One of the questions I had when I was out taking a look at it, so there are 2 pieces of property. There's the unbuildable lot between your house and Daisy Lane.
Correct.
Help the board understand where, I'll say, the accessory lot ends and the public right-of-way begins. What I'm trying to understand is really where the building is. Is it on the house lot or is it on the non-buildable lot?
Technically, it falls on both.
Okay,
Yes, because it splits the difference technically. And that's why I guess this is getting a little off, because as you see there, the blue section is considered our second lot, non-buildable, and that's where the current shed is.
okay. And do we know, is it a public right-of-way to the west of their lot line? So between the street and their property line?
I went there and measured, and that's some of his variance is all about. He's gonna be out of the right of way, and then being on a corner lot with an accessory structure in the side yard, we require another 5 feet. So that's what it's all about.
We also, all 3 of our neighbors have, written it.
Yeah.
So we agree.
Bridie, are we okay, since this straddles 2 parcel IDs, do we need to include both, or can we say for the house located at 920 Bell, as part of a motion? I guess I don't want anyone coming back and saying, well, it's.
Right, I would include both parcels.
Is that something we can get, Ruth, prior to voting on anything? Or are the parcel IDs in the application there?
So, no, I was treating this as one lot.
Okay.
So I don't have both parcel IDs, but I could get it from the county.
I looked and found one, but it didn't occur to me to write both of them down. So I have the parcel ID for the smaller of the two lots. But, so I would want to include both in any motion that we propose.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess just to be clear, so when we are considering a 27-foot side yard variance, the shed is going to be 3 feet from the public right of way.
Yeah, not 3 feet from the road. 3
Correct,
feet
okay,
from the right of way.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's plenty of road.
Okay. Okay, right. Okay. Other questions from the board? No? Okay. All right, so we'll wait for Ruth to get the parcel IDs.
I made one. I didn't realize this time needs a separate person. It's kind of this.
Yeah, I've got 076030. What is the larger of the two? What's
The
the,
40, ending in 40 is the larger, ending in 30 is the little strip.
okay, there, 076040. Okay. So I didn't hear any other questions from the board.
No.
Okay. So, any other comments from the audience or from the applicants? Okay. With that, I guess I would make a motion here for the property located at 920 Bell Road with parcel ID number 29-076040 and parcel ID number 29-076030. I would make a motion to approve a side yard variance of 27 feet to allow a 10-foot by 20-foot accessory structure.
Second.
You've trained me and the night is not even over. Thank you. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Any questions? Okay. John?
Just for clarification on the site plan, what's the 23 feet?
That was my distance from the road edge. I was trying to get as close as I could to definition for you to try and give you some measurements.
Is that after they're for the city?
But it appears to be immaterial to the application.
Yeah, I think that was an early submittal and then Dave went out, right?
Yeah, Dave went out and I staked the property just so we were all on the same page.
Thank you.
You're comfortable, John?
I am.
Okay. We have a motion and seconded. Ruth, would you call roll?
Andy Hitchcock,
Yes?
John Bruno,
Yes.
Lindsay Selk,
Yes.
Cindy McCutcheon.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, those were our 3 items on today's agenda. I don't have any new business. Do we have any old business that we need to discuss? No? All right, well, with that, it is 8:14. We will adjourn. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, applicants and citizens.